Hello! I wanted to talk to you today about the feeling of imposter syndrome when it comes to my ADHD. I have relatively mild ADHD on the spectrum of ADHD symptoms. I am not terribly debilitated by my symptoms. I can still function relatively normally, and this is why it took me until age 44 to finally realize that I had ADHD, and it was my son's symptoms, who has very classic ADHD symptoms, that finally got me looking into ADHD and figuring out what it looked like in girls and how I matched so many of these symptoms. That allowed me to self-diagnose, and then I went and saw my family doctor, who was able to confirm, not officially because she doesn't have that ability, but within her means, that she suspected I had ADHD, which validated how I had been feeling. So I'm confident with my self-diagnosis and her diagnosis here. But nevertheless, my symptoms on the scale of things are still relatively mild. I see on other YouTube channels or in Reddit posts and stuff, people who have ADHD who are really struggling with it and having a difficult time. And it's funny that it brings out in me a feeling of imposter syndrome. Like, my symptoms are so mild that I don't really count. I feel like sometimes I can't fit in with the discussions. I feel a little out of place in these forums, in these spaces, because I can still get by in the world without medication. I didn't end up pursuing an official diagnosis through a psychologist because I didn't feel like medication, the expense necessary to get the prescription for the medication, would be justified by how much it would improve my life. I'm sure it would improve it a little bit, but it was going to be very expensive. We don't have insurance, so it would be out of pocket, and it just didn't seem worth it to me. I felt that I could probably I had managed this far through coping mechanisms and other systems and strategies that I had developed just over the course of my adult life. And I figured I could continue doing that, and I still feel that's true. But being at that level of, I can't even really call it impairment, leaves me sort of in a different space from a lot of people who have much more severe symptoms than I do. And it's a weird feeling, and sometimes it makes me doubt whether I really belong here in this space, whether I can contribute anything, because if I'm not really badly hampered by my symptoms, who am I to be offering advice on how to improve them? Maybe the stuff that works for me is not going to work for someone who has much more severe symptoms. And so it's something that I try to remember and try to bear in mind as I'm offering this advice. I have put a little disclaimer on my channel, and I mention it from time to time in my videos. And yet, despite this feeling of imposter syndrome, the reality is I do still have to deal with all these symptoms. For instance, this week, it's the start of December. It's the first week of December. And we have the elf on the shelf, which is probably every parent's, or most parents', bane of the Christmas season, because you have to remember, get creative. Remembering is so I've fallen at that first hurdle of December Christmas season. I didn't even get their advent calendar until December 2nd because I'd forgotten that as well. The elf on the shelf, my eldest, my daughter, had to remind me. She's 10. I think she's figured it out by now. But she gave me a little, chastisement when she was going to bed one night. I guess it was maybe on the third night, not to forget to move the elves. She has, fortunately, been being very secretive about it still around our younger son. So I think the magic is still there for him. But even if it's not, it's just fun for them to find out where the elves have gone, I guess. But yes, she had to remind me for that one. And then last night, oh my gosh, my son lost his tooth during the day, and I remembered to move the elves, and I forgot the tooth fairy. And then, of course, he goes and he looks at his tooth fairy spot the very next morning, and his tooth is still there. Fortunately, today was a snow day. We had a whole bunch of snow. The buses weren't running. The kids were home from school. And as I was able to say, well, the tooth fairy probably couldn't make it through all the snow to come and collect your tooth. So there was a ready-made excuse there. And I'll leave a little note for him tonight when I go to bed. And also move the elves. But there's stuff like that happens to me where forgetfulness is my worst thing. I'm constantly forgetting stuff. And running late is another thing that I really struggle with. Motivation, getting myself to do stuff that really doesn't interest me. I have a contract that I'm working on right now for someone. Like, I've been paid, I've signed this thing, they're expecting work from me, and it takes me forever to get down on my computer during the day because I'm not that excited about it. I'm currently in a portion of the contract that's really dull for my brain. So I struggle with things like that, hauling myself out of bed in the morning, or the inertia of sitting yourself down on the couch, not being able to get up again. I have a lot of these issues that are very common across ADHD, the ADHD experience. They may not be severe. I'm not constantly misplacing my keys, for instance. I don't know how much of that is because I have a place where the keys always go. As soon as I come in the door from the car, I come inside, I take my coat and shoes off, and I hang the keys up on their hook. It's like a 3-step thing that happens, or within that 1-minute window of coming in the door. So I have a system there, and I don't know if I didn't have that, whether I'd be more prone to losing the keys or setting things down. I did have a moment today. I had a dentist appointment, and I was taking a fidget with me so that I could fiddle with that while they were working on my teeth. And I had found a little chain that my kids had, and I thought, oh, this would make a great fidget to play with while I'm sitting there. And I put it somewhere, and then I couldn't find it again before I was leaving. And I could have sworn that I hadn't put it anywhere strange. I thought through all the things I'd done. It hadn't been that long. And my husband was there. And I go, where could it have gone? This is so weird. And my husband goes, it's not that weird, actually. And I'm like, yes, you're right. It's not actually that weird. Because I do that a lot too, where things get misplaced just in the house. I've set them down in the wrong spot as I'm going from room to room, trying to get myself ready, trying to get the kids ready, whatever the situation is. So I have these experiences that I think would resonate with pretty much anyone who has ADHD, and they're fairly mild. As I say, I can get through life just fine. And it does leave me feeling in a place where it makes it more difficult to connect to the more severe cases that I see in forums and stuff. But I have to remind myself that ADHD is a spectrum, and just like autism or a lot of other conditions, and that we are spread across the spectrum, and the people who are at the more severe end of the spectrum are of course going to really stand out, and a lot of the people at the mild end of the spectrum may not even realize they have ADHD, or they may not participate in these spaces in the same way that people with severe symptoms will. But there's still probably thousands, millions of people out there who have severe or who have mild symptoms of ADHD and could relate to my own experience and have the same experience with these forums and other spaces, the YouTube channels, that it's relatable, but it's not too relatable because like me, their symptoms are more mild. So I think that's who I'm trying to reach out to with this channel, is the people who are getting by but could use some additional tips or strategies to help them out in improving some of their difficulties. Not that I have things figured out by any means, but I feel like I'm in an okay spot, and I have some strategies that I've developed and that I use that might help other people. Plus, there's still things that I am working on, and the process of figuring those out I can share with viewers and other people who have mild symptoms like myself that might help them in their own journeys. So it's been a bit of a process trying to wrap my head around this imposter syndrome that I kind of still feel. But I think that there are others out there who can relate, and we have our own, there is the opportunity there to connect with other people who have a similar experience to me. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. If you have mild ADHD like myself, I'd be interested in hearing from you. You can leave a comment down below. Tell me how well you connect to the ADHD community, or some of the things that you feel you've developed fairly well that have helped you. I'd be interested in hearing all that. And until next time, have a lovely day. Bye.